the Self-Achievement Network. My name is Dominic, and I am here back with our former person behind the passion. This is David Chametzky. Hey, David, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going, Dominic? Long time no catch.
No catch.
Yeah, we haven't caught up, right? So now we got to catch up.
Oh, gotcha. I got it. I forget the lingo, man. I'm like behind the times. As you can see, I'm a little bit like, who? How old is this guy? Where does he? Where was he born? Is he 1920? No, I'm 64. No, 63. Soon to be 64.
Well, me too. I'm catching on. I'm right behind you. I hope to never catch you. That's the goal.
That's right, exactly. So anyway, we're here today. David was the bold one to step up and say, "Hey, I want to go live with Dominic and talk about what's been going on in my life." And so yeah, so here we are, and we got about 30 minutes. David was our former person behind the passion. I can't remember who nominated you even. Who was that?
Ivan Wanji, who
Oh, right, right.
I speak to him all the time. He checks on me. He is really one of the blessings that have come out of the network for me because he really has checked on me. I mean, through all the challenges I've gone through the past couple of years, he has been one of the constants and praying for me, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's right. And then you nominated
A few people, but
right.
Beatrice Weber, who
Beatrice, right?
yeah, who also is an incredible person, and she just became executive director for YAFED, which is an organization assisting people who are looking to not get out of, but who remove themselves from the Hasidic Jewish community.
Amazing. She's a shining star. She's really
Yeah,
come along.
she
Yeah,
just had an amazing TEDx talk that I went to go see, and she is really a beacon of light, and so many people need to know her and meet her, and you'd agree.
hmm It's really blows my mind. I'm like, I'm this suburban Chicago guy that started this thing called the Self-Achievement Network, and all these people that have come through about 350 interviews that I've done, and to watch you guys blossom, it's just it's really mind-boggling, and it's like, oh, actually, maybe I did something actually good.
Yeah, it's the people you meet, and again, there's no way that you and I would have ever met. It's the universe really bringing us together and bringing you the right people to be part of your life, and that's why I was glad when you and I reached out and said we need to reconnect.
Right. Exactly. So when you were nominated as person behind the passion, we went through this interview, and you told us about this thing that you've been doing. You had a kind of a rough several years, and then you got through that, and then you started writing books, and then you came up with this idea about peace, love, and bring a bat. And so give us a little bit of a background about what that, just like condense it. We don't have a whole hour.
Yeah, sure.
Tell
so
us about
so
you and where you're at today.
Yeah, so when we first met, I thought I had already had passed all the trials and tribulations of life, but that's the thing that we have to always do. And for the past couple of years, I really went through it all again. And this past year was a great testament of all the real learnings that I did. In this past year, I've gone through three very close deaths. My best friend, then I took care of his mom, and just last week, my own mom passed away. So managing those things, I don't know that I could have handled it as well as I am now, even 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That was what broke my life 3 years ago, just carrying the weight differently, the weight of life differently. And now, man, I have to tell you, going through what I've gone through this year and still pushing out the books and things like that, it's been a long time, but that's the idea. And that's what I like talking about and doing is really making sure that we're able to move and rise from our ashes when I talk about the phoenix
Right.
and
The Phoenix.
really
I remember that. Yeah.
know, I'm going to have a million guests. We've already gone through 100 episodes on Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat, my podcast. And so I'm pretty
Right.
proud of that. That's that consistency. That's what life's about, the consistency and what we do to get there.
hmm That's 100 episodes, man.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I think that I always think in terms of like evolution and what I'm going to do next. And I when you mentioned handling your mom's funeral and all that, I mean, I had to do the same thing, and and there's never any way to prepare for that. It's prepare a
Yeah,
little bit here and there, but in the big scheme of things, it's such an emotional thing. It's an
yeah,
emotional time, and when I was younger, I think, yeah, well, yeah, one of these days, I'm gonna have to handle my mom's or my dad's funeral. But just like put it way back here, not a big deal. And then all of a sudden, here it is,
yeah.
and here I am with, I'm in my 60s and I'm evolving. So just like you, just like everyone, and I love the direction that you're going. You have really have risen from the ashes, and
Yeah,
so
I did. I mean, 3 years ago, even though I knew all the right resources, I still the weight of the world was on my shoulders, and I nearly collapsed. Metaphorically, I tried to kill myself. I talk about it, so it's not something that I, hide or I think there's a conversation. That's one of the big conversations I like talking about is mental health, because we've all experienced mental health challenges, and 89% of people who attempt suicide don't succeed. So that means there's a lot of people out there who still might be in pain. And I could tell you from at least from my experience, that it's definitely possible. I mean, even I like shifting the energy. So you mentioned about my mom, and I told you offline the funny story that I'd be willing to share. So my mom's journey, it was not sudden. So it was something that we knew was coming up. So I was able to plan. I was able to plan as best as we could for all the things. But you can't plan for everything. I mean,
right.
my grandfather used to say, men make plans and God laughs, and God definitely had some humor this past week. But I wanted to try to make some more humor at the funeral, and not because I was glad or happy that my mom had transitioned, but I wanted to take the sadness that was out of the room. And I think we all need to do that in a lot of different ways in our lives. Again, offline, we were talking about politically. I think if we look at it differently and shift the energy. So at my mom's funeral, I came up there and I was like, I wanted to start off with congratulating my mom for coming here. She was late to her own funeral, which is not a bad thing. We had lots of different things. She was living in Texas with near my sister, and to get her released to go to fly to Texas and all the things, everything that could delay it delayed it a little bit. And even I come in the day of the funeral, and the funeral director had a little mark on her eye. I go, "What happened?" She goes, "It was your mom." I go, "Okay, you need to tell me that story." When they put my mom, they picked her up at the airport. She flew, and the car broke down. So okay, so that's another story, right? So we couldn't get her out of Texas, right? Talk about really couldn't get her out of Texas. Then the car broke down, so they got the backup car, and as they're putting her in, they strap her in. One of the bungee cords popped off, and almost, thank God, it didn't hit her in the eye.
Right.
And you're like, all right, if there's anything that I can say, my mom definitely resisted this whole trip as much as she could, and even in the cemetery, it's usually like you get in the cemetery and then it's like a left and a right. There were so many different ways. We had like zigzag around and I kept on laughing. I was like, I know you're struggling to do this, but you're going to get where you need to go. This is going to be a successful mission. And I think that's really where we all need to go to, is think about things differently. Even in our sadness, there's opportunities to really find the right path that'll lead us to our time to soar. It's one of those things I'm writing about, how we're all paths on a journey, like Ram Dass says. We walk each other home. But if we could find the humor and not carry it as heavily as sometimes we feel it,
Hmm.
I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know who Ram Dass is.
Right.
And I started reading his stuff many, many years ago. And the funniest story that I've heard, I got to tell you this because it's really funny. When he became like this guru guy, right?
Hmm.
You know that, and so then he's telling a story about one day he went home and he's talking to his father, and then his father's like, well, who came up with his name?
Right.
Did you hear the story?
I have not. No.
So it's I mean, Ram Dass is an amazing guy. I don't remember his real name, but he's a his the books that he's written is so much depth of knowledge. It's really helped me in my journey in my earlier years a lot. And so his dad's asking him, who came up with this name, Rammed Ass? He's like, Dad, wait, no, it's Ram Das, not Rammed Ass.
Yeah, but the real, even with his story, is that he was a Harvard professor.
Right.
It wasn't that he was this, or he grew up in a, a hippie environment. I mean, he grew up in a very conservative mindset, thinking, and you can hear that by his dad's story, by his dad, calling it rammed ass. But to come from that to then to this enlightened person who really exudes peace, love, and it really is incredible.
It totally is incredible. We all have our journey that you were talking about, your mom's funeral and how funny she resisted. And I think that there's I mean, I don't know how much truth there is to all of it, but at least there's some that you were willing to bring some humor into it. And my father, when he died, before he died, he brought me, he said, come to my house, I want to talk to you. So he's telling me all this, I don't want this at the funeral, I don't want that, I want this, I want that, So my dad was a very proud Navy veteran. And he said, I want Stars and Stripes played, and I want you to play it really loud. Da, da, da. And he said, I don't want your uncle playing taps. No. If he comes up in front of the room with his trombone or trumpet and starts to play taps, you yank him off the stage. I'm like, okay, Dad, I promise. You have my word. I won't, So anyway, we got to bring some humor into it. And you're right. Walking each other together, I think, is a very important point. And I appreciate that. Did you have that point of view? Because, life is short. I was like 18, I don't know, about 3 months ago. And all of a sudden I'm going to be 54. Like, what is really going on when people say life is short? And, when we, I've had conflicts with family members, with my children, with friends, over silly things that don't make any sense or make any, they're like so trivial now. So to look back and say, we were talking about that, like I gave your dog a little bite of my pizza and you're really upset with me. That was a long time ago. And, it's so trivial. And I'm not to make it, like that was, I'm not trivializing what I did, but in the big scheme of things, that's very, very tiny. And I think that people need to let go of anything that they have going on with people because we're walking together.
That's where we all get hung up. I mean, I have got hung up also in the past on things, and people ask me, did this want to show up, with the funeral? And I go, there wasn't any invitations. I mean, whoever showed up, I sent out love to people who didn't show up. I think we have to remind ourselves that love is an energy, and you could choose to block it, but why? If somebody wants to show you love, okay, great. And that doesn't mean, and I'm talking about just the unconditional love, not, oh, hey, Dominic, I love you because you're going to buy me pizza. Though New York pizza is better than Chicago pizza. We'll have a different conversation about that.
My homemade is better, actually.
But love is love, man. That's where we get hung up on it so much. Again, when we talked about Ivan Wanje, who was part of our network, and he, there's weeks that I don't respond back, and all he wants to do is just send love, see how I'm doing, and we bless, and I he's really one of those people who I'm honored to have met. I would have never met somebody in Uganda without this network, and the the sharing of knowledge and meeting his children. We've done some couple of Zooms and touching those people, those kids who then hear that there are people thousands of miles away who care about them. That's what love is about. And that's really, really one of the magical pieces of what we do and, the connections we make.
Mhm. You're right. I just interviewed a guy last week from Ghana,
Mm,
and like the world is getting smaller for me. It really
yep.
is, and it's really, for a better word, it's really excuse me, touching that we can create this now with the tools that we have with social media and with technology, and with all
Yep.
this stuff. So anyway, so tell us about your like your so you were going through some hard times, and then you kind of became the phoenix rising out of that, and now you have done, I don't know how many TED Talks, a couple of them, right?
I've only done one TED talk. I've done a
Okay,
couple
one.
talks that are like TED like, and I'm doing a bunch of speaking. So I've tried to fit in the middle of all the craziness some things that I really like to do because I really believe talking about it and finding a network of people who you can lean on and help. I mean, I do mentor people. On the path is something that's really important to me because it's your personal attitudes towards happiness. And, when we do that, we all have that different attitude and how we move forward. And when you're able to move forward, then you're able to soar. If you look at life as a process, it's so incredible. So I really enjoy coming out and talking to people and meeting people and, connecting. That's why, either electronically now we have the whole world at our hands. And as the world is starting to reopen, we need to reintroduce ourselves to a new world, not go back to where we were, because there was, put a lot more love into it. And when you meet somebody, you know, everybody has their own issues. You never know what anybody's going through, and that's the powerful part of connecting. Is you know, again, you and I spoke offline. The caring piece. That's really important for each one of us to know that somebody else is out there if you need, and it's a big help.
It's a huge help. I know you've done a lot of work with charities, and you've supported a lot of people to raise money, food, all that kind of stuff. So this whole like transition, you went from, being in the ashes to rising above, and then you had this dream, this thought about doing a TED Talk.
Yeah.
I think is really important because it like puts that goal out there, and then to work towards reaching that goal. There's something about that, and I've done the same thing in similar ways. I went from being totally shy and freaked out about talking to people, especially in person in front of a group of people, to spending about 15 years in front of people,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
having that goal out there really supported me. It was like intentionally putting this goal out there, which like narrowed my focus and helped me to like get there a lot faster. So tell us about that journey that you went through to get to this where you got to, did your TED talk. You
Yeah,
finally.
so you have to say, okay, what do I really want? Everybody talks about a bucket list, and is the bucket list out here where it's unreachable, or is the bucket list right in front of you? I'm gonna actually. So one of the things that happened this year was my best friend passed away unexpectedly. Didn't know. Here's his passport. As I'm going through his apartment, it does not have one stamp in it.
Wow.
That's a promise that we all make when you get a passport. That's a bucket list that who cares if you write down what your bucket list is? And that was what I did. Is I was unsuccessful applying to a TEDx, and right after my suicide attempt, when I started building myself, because I knew the right resources. I used we all might have a gym membership, but not everybody goes to the gym. So I was like, okay, what do I really still want? I want to know where I failed in other times, where I was unsuccessful, and how I would like to be successful. And that's the thing that I really talk about. And that was why I was like, okay, I'm a phoenix. I've always talked about being a phoenix, but I talked about suicide other times. I didn't know that I had to love myself. I knew that I loved everybody else. But one of the biggest questions I ever got right after my suicide attempt was, do you love yourself? And I had to think about that. Well, if you have to think about it, the answer is no. Be honest. And I had to really be honest with myself about, why didn't I love myself? What did I
Mm.
need to do to bring myself out of my ashes? Now, my situation, separated from my wife, all the other stuff, that wasn't going to change. So it's not just, oh, I need to just be back with, a person. No, I need to fix myself. I need to do that. And one of the things I did was, talk to the producer. I was like, well, why was I unsuccessful for that particular thing? It was a bar that I set. And he goes, you didn't answer all the questions. He goes, you answered all the questions, but there was stuff missing. I needed to ask questions back. I go, well, why didn't you? He goes, I get 500 applications a year. I can't, be playing games. He goes, like everything else, your authenticity and leaving it all on the table. And I've always done that. When I play ball, I might not be the best ball player, but I left it all on the field. And so that's what I did. And that's when I came up with the concept of the podcast, Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. I knew I had a New York accent, so people would always like to hear that part of it. And I do have a little bit of an attitude, but that's not what the bat's about. The bat's about, knowing your non-negotiables, knowing the things that you want, and also knowing how great it is when you swing that bat and you hit the sweet spot. And that ball, it doesn't have to be a home run. I always say a home run sometimes is the worst possible thing that could ever happen. It stops a rally. This the team. If you have a couple of hard singles, a double here, another hard single, the other team is more on their heels than if you hit a home run and you reset everything.
Mhm.
Resetting everything is really important. And I was able to reset myself and then use the tools I knew how to do. So, at the beginning, I was my best client because I knew what to do. I knew what I had to do. I needed to get additional resources. I now do acupuncture all the time. I then was in therapy because I needed to make sure that I had see things differently. That's why having a mentor in so many different ways is really helpful. Somebody that you could talk to and will give you feedback, honest feedback, not tell you what to do. This is always our choice. And
Mhm.
that's where I got there. And I knew it all. And I kept on doing it. And then once I started telling my story, more people wanted to hear my story. I mean, for my TEDx talk, 9 people who I never knew reached out to me to understand the mindset